What you are about to hear is the compilation of Act I of our series, Rubicon, which is an on-the-ground audio drama about the fall of the Roman Republic. Act I. The conquering Republic picks up in 146 BC. Rome has just destroyed its greatest rival, Carthage, and stands at the height of its military power. Beneath the surface, however, cracks are starting to form. The conquering Republic follows the rise and fall of the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, as they attempt to reform a system that was built to govern a single city, but now that city has an empire. Romans of later periods will look back on the brothers Gracchi as the beginning of the end of the Republic. This is a dramatized history, partly fictional, but inspired by Plutarch, Appian, and Sallust, among others. Without further ado, the conquering Republic.
The year is 146 BC. We are in the garden of Cornelia, the daughter of Scipio Africanus, mother to Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, and aunt and mother-in-law to Scipio Aemilianus. Now around 40, Cornelia was a strikingly beautiful woman, no doubt inherited from her father Scipio.
Daughter, mother, wife, widow. It is a strange thing, Hilaria, to look at a life and realize it has always been defined by the men we lose. My father's shadow is so long, it reaches even into this garden, 30 years after his death. Which of these roles is a woman's greatest achievement? What do you think?
I think...
The woman smiled, though she kept her eyes lowered for a moment. Sempronia Hilaria was a freedwoman who had spent half her life in the service of this house before receiving her liberty from Cornelia's late husband. She was roughly Cornelia's age, and while her beauty was of a more rugged, earthbound sort, she carried herself with a quiet efficiency and grace that made her indispensable to the estate.
A long shadow provides a cool place to rest, Cornelia. You have carried the name Scipio with more grace than any of the men who bear it. But I think you have left out a category.
And what would that be?
Lover.
The word was spoken softly. Hilaria's hand drifted toward the talisman hanging from her neck, a fascinum of old bronze. Beside her sat Blosius, a philosopher born in the Greek town of Cumae, in southern Italy. While they sat a respectful distance apart, Hilaria's fingers brushed the stone bench near Blosius's hand, and the two shared a fleeting, private look. Blosius exuded an air of dignity with his greying hair and neatly trimmed beard, a match for Hilaria's grounded wisdom. Cornelia noted the subtle current between her trusted confidant and the tutor of her children. She was moved by the quiet understanding between these two adults who had found a soulmate in one another.
What prompts you to pose this question?
As a pedagogue of the Stoic school, he tended to question a question rather than answer it. Cornelia shut her eyes and lifted her face to the warm sunlight. It was a quiet day on the Palatine. She heard the music of birdsong from the rooftops.
Idle musings. I was thinking that Hilaria and I both lost our fathers at an early age. We are both widows, though our paths to this garden were very different. After my father's death, relatives arranged for me to wed dear old Tiberius Gracchus.
He was a man of great gravity, Cornelia. He gave you many wonderful children.
12 to be exact. Each was precious to me. Alas, that only 3 survived. I look at them, Tiberius, so earnest and quiet, and I wonder if I have given them a legacy or a shroud. I want them to be great, Hilaria, not for my sake, but because Rome is becoming a place where only the great can survive.
But what remarkable children those 3 are, thanks in no small part to their instruction from Blosius and your own tireless hand. Your daughter Sempronia is already happily married, and the world expects great things of your sons.
I think we've answered the question, at least regarding myself. Since I no longer have a living father or husband, and no time for a lover, motherhood is my highest role. My achievement will be my sons. I do not want to be remembered as the daughter of Africanus because I am proud. I want to be remembered as the mother of the Gracchi, because I want my sons to be the men who lead Rome in these dire times.
Many an old-fashioned Roman would be appalled to overhear a woman speak of her sons as a sculptor speaks of marble.
Yet here we sit. The world is tilting, Hilaria. After my father defeated Hannibal, there was a sense of purpose. Now, we have more gold than we have virtue. The world changes.
The world is always changing, sometimes for the worse.
Then it will be up to our children to change it for the better.
And which of your sons will do more to change the world?
Hard to say. They're so different. Tiberius is so serious, so earnest for an 18-year-old, mature beyond his years. Now that he's a soldier, off fighting those poor Carthaginians, or what's left of them, I hope his outlook doesn't become even more somber. Little Gaius is only 9, but what a different fellow he is. I fear he may be rather too impulsive and hot-tempered.
But very sure of himself, especially for a boy his age. As their tutor, I can say that both brothers are remarkably self-confident, a trait I attribute to their mother.
I attribute that to their grandfather, though he was dead long before either was born. How I wish the boys could have known him, and that I could have known him longer than I did. Still, I've done all I can to instill in the boys a deep respect for their grandfather's accomplishments. They bear the name Gracchus proudly, but they are also obliged to live up to the standards of Scipio Africanus. It is a heavy thing to hand down.
Cornelia blinked and shaded her eyes. The garden had suddenly grown too hot, and the sunlight too bright. The singing birds had fallen silent.
They say it's no longer a question of if Carthage is destroyed.
But when, and when that happens,
Carthage shall be the second city in a matter of months to suffer such a fate at Rome's hands.
The philosopher resided in Cornelia's house, and he and the mistress of the house saw each other almost daily. Their thoughts often ran side by side, like horses hitched together.
When General Mummius captured Corinth, there was rejoicing in the streets of Rome.
and weeping in the streets of Corinth. Every male citizen killed, every woman enslaved. One of the most sophisticated and opulent cities in all Greece, obliterated by Roman arms.
Temples were desecrated. Priceless works of art were destroyed by his rioting soldiers. Even the most anti-Greek reactionaries in Rome were embarrassed by Mummius's barbarism.
An example to anyone who would dare to challenge our supremacy, according to Mummius.
Cornelia fell silent and looked curiously towards the forum. Over the sound of bird-song in her garden, she could hear the city stirring.
Do you hear a commotion of some sort?
From the forum?
Closer than that, I think. Myron.
A young slave sitting on the ground nearby scrambled to his feet. Cornelia sent him to find out what was going on. While they awaited his return, the three of them sat silently, sharing the same unease. A commotion meant news of some sort. News could be good, or... At last Myron returned, out of breath, but smiling.
Mistress, tremendous news from Africa. Carthage has been taken. The war is over. A ship landed at Ostia this morning, and the messengers have just arrived in Rome. That's all I've found out so far. But if you wish, I can run down to the forum.
Hilaria's eyes welled with tears, a silent relief for the sons of the house. Blossius reached out, momentarily forgetting himself, and squeezed her hand firmly before pulling back to a more formal posture. Watching them, Cornelia suddenly felt very alone. The heat of the garden made her feel faint.
Yes, Myron, go and see what else you can discover. Perhaps there's some word about Roman casualties.
At once, mistress.
Myron spun about and abruptly collided with a man who was just stepping into the garden. Cornelia shielded her eyes from the sun. She squinted at the newcomer, then let out a cry.
Nicomedes, is it really you?
The man was one of Tiberius's slaves. He had accompanied his master to Carthage.
But Nicomedes, what are you doing here? Why aren't you still with Tiberius?
Despite the heat, Cornelia shivered.
Rather than speak for my master may speak for himself.
Nicomedes smiled and produced a covered wax tablet from the pouch he carried.
A letter from Tiberius.
Inscribed by my own hand amid the smoking ruins of Carthage, as dictated by your son, mistress, who is not only alive and well, but a hero of the Roman legions.
A hero?
As you shall understand when you read his letter.
Cornelia nodded. She felt strangely calm.
Myron, go and fetch young Gaius. He should be present to hear his brother's letter read aloud. Blossius, will you do it? My hands are shaking, and I don't think I could make sense of the letters.
A moment later, Gaius appeared, running ahead of Myron. He was a handsome boy, the very image of his grandfather.
Is it true, Mother? Carthage is taken, and there's a letter from Tiberius?
Yes, Gaius. Sit here beside me while Blossius reads it.
The philosopher cleared his throat.
To my beloved mother, daughter of the great Africanus, I write these words to you from the city my grandfather once conquered, which has just been conquered again by Roman arms. It shall never be conquered a third time. From this day forward, Carthage shall no longer exist. Along with this letter, Nicomedes also brings a memento from me. It is the mural crown, which I was awarded for having been the first soldier to scale the enemy walls.
From his pouch, Nicomedes produced a crown made of silver and moulded to resemble a crenellated wall with towers, such as might encircle a city. He presented the crown to Cornelia.
Your son received it in a public ceremony before the troops and wore it at a place of honor at the victory feast. He sent it home with me so that his mother might be the first in Rome to see it.
The first to scale the walls, the first Roman inside Carthage. Can you imagine how dangerous that must have been?
Cornelia could well imagine, and the thought made her light-headed. But she managed a smile and placed the crown atop Gaius's head. It was too big for him and slipped over his eyes. Everyone laughed. Gaius angrily pushed the crown from his head. It fell to the paving stones with a clatter.
That's not funny, Mother. The crown wasn't meant for me.
Hush, Gaius. Do not look at the silver of the crown. Look at the smoke in your brother's words. Let us hear the rest of the letter. Blossius, please continue.
For your household, I also have good news. Hilaria's nephew, who served in my personal guard, fought bravely in the battle. He killed many of the enemy and sustained no injuries.
Thank the gods!
Hilaria pressed her hands to her heart. Blossius peered at the tablet intently, reading ahead. His face was grim.
Go on, Blossius. What else does Tiberius write?
Only a bit of description of the battle itself, nothing of a personal nature.
Very well, let's hear it.
I'm not sure I should read this aloud in front of the boy, or in front of you for that matter. I suppose it's a mark of Tiberius's deep respect for you that he should write to his mother as candidly as he might have written to his late father.
We have shared the same books and the same thoughts for years. If you won't read it aloud, I will.
Cornelia put aside the mural crown, rose to her feet, and took the tablet from him.
As for Carthage, the ghost of Cato may finally rest. The city, which was as old as Rome, is now utterly destroyed. The harbour is demolished, the houses burned, the altars for human sacrifice reduced to rubble. The gardens have been uprooted. The grand mosaics of the public squares have been stained with blood. Many were slain in the final struggle, and the few who survive will become slaves. The city that once rivaled Rome now lies in ashes. When Alexander conquered Persia, he chose to leave the city of Babylon intact and to make its people his subjects. For his clemency, he was exalted by gods and men. We have followed an older example, that of the Greeks who sacked the city of Troy and left only ruins behind. The Greek playwrights tell of many misfortunes that subsequently befell the victorious Greeks, Ajax, Ulysses, Agamemnon, and the rest. I pray the gods will favour what we have done to Carthage and will grant a righteous destiny to the Roman people, who have done this fearful thing for the glory of Jupiter.
Her hands trembling, Cornelia put down the tablet. Her eyes looked distant, haunted.
Oh, Tiberius, my poor sombre boy, what has this war done to your soul?
If only I could have been there. What a glorious day it must have been. And now it shall never happen again, because Carthage is gone, and I was too young to be there. I can hardly wait for Tiberius to come home and tell me more about it.
Be careful what you wish to see, Gaius. The fall of a great city is not a spectacle for boys.
Hilaria turned away, unable to look at the child's excitement.
War is the way of the world, and always will be. Clearly, the gods of Rome were greater than those of Carthage. For that, we must be thankful, and yet, I am fearful for Rome's future. How astute is Tiberius when he points to the example of the Greeks against Troy. I am reminded of the Greek hero Achilles, who was very nearly invincible. Yet, when he desecrated the corpse of the Trojan Hector, the gods frowned upon his hubris and withdrew their protection, and Achilles died like any other mortal on the battlefield. Rome has entered a new era. With the destruction of Corinth, the Romans' respect for Greek culture degenerated to wanton looting. With the destruction of Carthage, the Romans are without rival in the Mediterranean. But how will Rome bear the responsibilities of power and wealth unprecedented in the history of the world? We must pray that the gods will give Rome wise men to lead her into the future, and wise women to nurture those men as boys.
Blossius, Hilaria, and Cornelia each turned their eyes to young Gaius. Inspired by visions of the carnage at Carthage, he had dared to pick up the mural crown and was testing its fit on his brow again, oblivious of their scrutiny.
We move forward now 13 years, to the year 133 BC. While Rome's borders have expanded, its heart is fracturing as the gap between the landed elite and the displaced poor reaches a breaking point. Tiberius Gracchus has been elected tribune of the plebs, sparking a radical political firestorm that threatens to upend the Senate's authority. In the quiet gardens of the Palatine, his friends and family now gather to weigh the cost of a vision that could either save the Republic or ignite a civil war.
Tiberius is headed for trouble, Mother. Serious trouble. He has no idea what he's up against. I don't know if I can keep following him.
Quintus Sempronius was the nephew of Sempronia Hilaria, but since she had raised him from childhood, she was effectively his mother. They sat on the patio of her modest townhouse on the Palatine's lower slopes, a gift from her former mistress, Cornelia. Though technically still part of the sprawling estate, the small dwelling offered her a precious sense of autonomy. Hilaria takes a quiet bite of cold cabbage, the sharp tang of the garum marinade cutting through the midsummer heat.
Tiberius Gracchus has always been your friend, Quintus. We owe the Semproni everything. Our support should be a given, not a question. When he was elected tribune, you should have recognized the opportunity. Instead, you've made a spectacle of avoiding him.
Blossius, the Stoic philosopher, helps himself to a portion of the cabbage. Though his official duties as tutor to the Gracchi were long finished, the philosopher remained a fixture of the household, spending fewer hours in Cornelia's halls and more in the quiet company of Hilaria's garden, just a short walk away.
Look at this new legislation, this commission to redistribute the ager publicus. You could have secured a seat on that board. We could have stood by Tiberius and Cornelia while ensuring our own family wasn't left behind in the reaping.
I would have ended my career before it even began. This whole affair will end in disaster.
Not necessarily. To be sure, Tiberius is playing a dangerous hand. His boldness astonishes me, though perhaps it shouldn't. He is, after all, his grandfather's blood and his mother's pride.
And Blossius's pupil. You Stoics are forever whispering that a just king is better than a republic. You filled his head with Greek fantasies, and now he's acting on them.
Tiberius is a visionary, Quintus. If my teachings gave him the spark to see what Rome could be, then I'll wear that pride to my grave.
And will you share his grave when the whole enterprise collapses? You're blinded by the crowds.
He is the most beloved man in Rome.
Which makes him the most hated man in the Senate.
Enough. The sun is too hot for this grandstanding. If you're going to bicker, at least make it worth the breath. Tell me, plainly, why is this specific gamble of Tiberius's the one that either saves Rome or burns it to the ground?
You know the crisis as well as we do, Hilaria. You simply wish to hear us argue it aloud.
I'm forcing you to be brief. Start with the land. Our ancestors won Italy acre by acre, and every victory brought us ager publicus. What was the promise back then, Quintus?
The promise was simple. You bleed for Rome, you get a farm. The smallholder was the spine of the Republic. You own land, you're fit to serve in the legions. No land, no army. It's that simple.
And yet, look at the streets today. Where are the farmers?
They're begging in the Subura. Ever since the gold from the east started flooding in, the great men have developed an insatiable hunger for soil. They found every legal loophole, every crooked surveyor to swallow the public plots whole.
And they didn't replace those farmers with Roman neighbours, they replaced them with gangs, massive silent armies of slaves who don't need wages and don't get drafted.
The midsummer air is thick, and the irony of the situation isn't lost on the trio. While they sit in a garden gifted by a Scipio, the very foundation of the Roman military, the citizen soldier, is being erased from the Italian map.
The rot has reached the front lines, Hilaria. Look at Spain. Numantia is a slaughterhouse because the Senate clique has forgotten how to lead. They treat our soldiers like expendable cattle. We are beating our own citizens and selling them into the very slavery that stole their livelihoods.
And Sicily? I hear the rumours at the market. They say the island is lost.
Sicily is an inferno, a total slave revolt. We've imported so much misery that the spark finally hit the tinder. It's a powder keg. Dispossessed farmers in the city, humiliated soldiers in the camps, and a tide of brutalized slaves in the fields. The people are screaming for a champion.
And Tiberius thinks he's the one to hold the torch, but he doesn't realise when you hold a torch in a powder keg, you don't just light the way, you destroy everything in your path.
A tribune at 29. Cornelia must be so proud.
Having Appius Claudius as a father-in-law helps. The Claudii are radical, wealthy, and they hold the Senate by the throat. But even Claudius can't stop a veto. Tiberius only needs one of his 9 colleagues to say the word, and his great vision dies on the floor of the assembly. And believe me, the landowners have enough silver to buy a dozen vetoes.
That's why Tiberius needs our support. The Roman people won that land, and so it should belong to the people.
I want the land returned as much as any man, but look at what it's costing. When Octavius issued his veto, Tiberius didn't just debate. He called for Octavius to be stripped of his office by the mob. And when Octavius refused to move, a freedman dragged him from the rostra. A servant was blinded in the scuffle, Blossius. Now the Senate is calling him a tyrant for doing what even Coriolanus never dared, breaking the sacrosanctity of a tribune.
Quintus's voice was low, strained with a desperate kind of agitation. He paced the courtyard, his eyes constantly darting toward the street, as if expecting the heavy tread of a senatorial lictor.
Tiberius acted within the law to do so.
Legal or not, he resorted to force, and force invites blood. Yes, his proposal is law now, and we have our commission. But look at the names on it. Tiberius, his father-in-law Appius Claudius, and his brother Gaius. Gaius is a boy of 21. I believe in the cause, Blossius. I truly do. But this is a target painted on all our backs.
He is surrounded by enemies, Quintus. He needed men he could trust with his life.
And in doing so, he's made it look like a dynasty. Hilaria, you say we owe the Semproni everything, and I know it. Our names are bound to theirs. But if I had taken a seat on that commission, I wouldn't be a statesman. I'd be a dead man walking. And now this business with the king of Pergamum. Attalus dies and leaves an entire kingdom to Rome, and Tiberius wants to bypass the Senate entirely to fund his farms.
The sunset cast long, blood-red shadows across the garden floor. Quintus stopped pacing and looked at Hilaria, his face pale with the realization of what was coming.
The people see it as a gift, but the Senate sees it as bribery on a royal scale. They are already whispering the word Rex. I have stood beside him since we were boys. I know the sound of his voice when he believes he is right, and I know he will not stop. I love Tiberius like a brother, but he is stepping onto a collapsing bridge, and I don't know if I have the courage to fall with him.
Tiberius has no designs on kingship. He is attempting a revolution from the bottom up, challenging the supremacy of the Senate by using the tribunate as it was meant to be used, even if the scale of it is unprecedented.
I think it's all terribly exciting. Quintus, why are you so convinced that he will fail?
Because his support is bleeding away, Mother. The common people might need the land, but they've bought into the argument that Tiberius insulted their own sovereignty when he dragged Octavius from the platform. And this business with Pergamum? Circumventing the Senate to seize a kingdom's wealth is playing with fire. Does he want to be a king? His enemies certainly think so.
Quintus turned his gaze sharply toward the philosopher.
He already holds court like one, keeping a Greek philosopher as his shadow.
My philosophy is Greek, but my blood is noble Campanian. I am as Italian as you. If Tiberius was my pupil as a boy and still consults me as a man, where is the crime in that?
The crime is in the optics. Roman magistrates do not consult Greek thinkers on matters of state, not unless they wish to look like tyrants. I only repeat what is being whispered in the forum. They ask, when the Pergamene ambassador arrived in Rome with the royal testament, the diadem, and the purple cloak of King Attalus, where did he go? Not to the Senate. He went straight to the house of Tiberius.
Not to anoint him. It was a courtesy, nothing more. The Gracchi and the house of Attalus have shared diplomatic ties for 30 years, ever since Tiberius's father cleared the late king's father of sedition. It is a family connection, not a royal plot.
Whatever the explanation, it looks suspicious to a man with an empty stomach and a suspicious mind. It looks like a king receiving his crown.
Nonsense. The land grabbers will stoop to any slander to protect their estates. They say he wants to be a king only because he stands for the people. The voters aren't fools. They won't believe such lies.
We'll see what they think soon enough. Tiberius is running for a second consecutive term as tribune. It is traditionally illegal for a magistrate to hold office 2 years in a row.
But the tribunate is different. There is precedent. If not enough candidates stand for the 10 positions, a standing tribune may remain. The law allows for it.
Is that the plot then? To bribe or scare away other candidates so he can hide behind a technicality?
The others will stand down because the people will demand it.
Can you not see where this ends? If he stands again and wins, his enemies will be backed into a corner. They will turn to violence. If he loses his immunity, and they will drag him into court on trumped-up charges until he's rotting in exile. No matter what happens, blood is going to be spilled. It's not that I disagree with the objective. The land must be redistributed, eventually. But if only Tiberius had taken a slower path, a more gradual approach...
The greedy landholders would have opposed me just the same.
Tiberius! Where did you come from?
From speaking in the forum, of course. Election day is coming. I thought I might find Blossius here.
Tiberius Gracchus was strikingly handsome, his features echoing the statues of his grandfather, Africanus, though today he appeared haggard. The unceasing demands of the re-election campaign had carved deep lines into his face. Yet he projected an aura that seemed to dwarf the small garden, that indefinable allure the Greeks called charisma.
I couldn't help but overhear Quintus. I've grown accustomed to defending myself before my enemies. Perhaps I should spend more time explaining myself to my friends.
I meant no offence, Tiberius, but here, in my mother's house, I make no secret of my misgivings.
And Blossius defended me, I'm sure. But even he cannot speak the words that come from my heart, for he has not seen what I have seen this last year. Hilaria, might I have a little wine? My throat is dry.
A slave brought a cup, and Tiberius drank thirstily before turning back to Quintus.
A year ago, I was no different from any other man seeking the tribunate. I wanted to make a name for myself. I believed in the speeches Blossius wrote for me, but they were a means to an end. A way to begin my ascent of the cursus honorum. Then, I travelled the length of Italy.
Tiberius shook his head, his voice growing even more strained.
What I witnessed was appalling. The countryside has been emptied of free men. It's as if the peninsula was tilted by a titan's hand, and all the people tumbled into Rome, piled on top of one another in the slums of the Subura. And the land they left behind? It was filled with slaves, armies of them, working until they drop for the handful of rich men who grab the soil. I saw slaves fall dead in the furrows, while the others worked around them under the whip. They are treated worse than the livestock. We argue policy in the abstract, but to see the reality is to be shaken to the core. Yet, it was the small farmers who still remain, the islands in the sea of slave estates, that truly changed me. These men have legionary standards at their gates. They are the blood and bone of Rome's army.
Tiberius smiled ruefully.
In Etruria, I saw a placard on a gate. It said, Tiberius Gracchus, help us keep our land. My name was misspelled, the letters crude, but then I saw another, and another. Stop the spread of slaves. Give us back our work. Somehow, news of my journey had spread. By the time I returned to Rome,
He drank more wine and leaned forward.
this mission is greater than I am. Politicians and their slanders will pass, but the destiny of the Roman people, those who feed this city and bleed for her, that is what endures.
My dear boy, I boast of being your tutor, but the student has far surpassed the teacher. I never imagined Cornelia's little boy would cast such a shadow over us all.
I have no illusions about my permanence, Blossius. I only wish to channel the power of the people for the glory of Rome. But come, we have practical matters. Appius Claudius wants to propose shortening military service and allowing non-senators to serve as judges before the election.
This requires serious discussion. At your mother's house?
Of course, Hilaria Quintus. Forgive my ramblings.
Nonsense, Tiberius. You are welcome any time. Please do come visit.
I will. Good day.
Tiberius and Blossius took their leave, and the garden suddenly felt empty. Quintus remained unmoved. To him, Tiberius was either a compulsive performer or an idealist blinded by his own vision. The passionate words only made Quintus feel more uneasy. Hilaria, however, thought of her friend Cornelia. She wondered which was better, to have a son who blazed like a comet with all its brilliant uncertainty, or a son as predictable as a lump of earth. For now, she envied Cornelia, but she wondered if, in the future, she would have reason to pity her.
This episode follows the final chaotic days of Tiberius Gracchus's first term as tribune and his controversial bid for a second year in office. As political gridlock turns into street violence, we witness the breakdown of Roman law on the Capitoline Hill. This is the story of the first major political assassination in the Republic's history, an event that changed the rules of Roman politics forever.
If only the election wasn't held in the height of midsummer, Blossius. It's a tactical strike by the Senate. My strongest supporters, the farmers, are miles away harvesting the very grain that feeds this city. They won't leave the fields for a ballot. Do you think we've reached enough of them?
It is no accident of the calendar, Tiberius. The ruling families have always arranged the seasons to favour the sedentary and disadvantage the labourer. They want a republic of the elite. But remember, if the cause is just and the candidate is steadfast, the will of the people cannot be thwarted by a harvest.
Stand still, Tiberius. Let me look at you.
Tiberius strikes an exaggerated pose.
How splendid you look. You carry the folds of that toga exactly as your father did. Both he and your grandfather, Africanus, would be proud today. I only wish your brother Gaius were here to see this, instead of scouring the dust of the countryside for votes.
Cornelia was bursting with pride at the accomplishments of her young son. She wondered if Gaius would follow in his older brother's footsteps.
Come along then. The augur is waiting in the garden. And stop rolling your eyes, Blossius. I know your Greek heart scorns our superstitions, but this ritual is the bedrock of our house. Your father never stepped before the voters without consulting the gods, Tiberius, and neither shall you.
The augur circles the wooden cage 3 times, his staff tracing lines in the dirt. He invokes the ancestors of the house of Gracchus. He scatters the sacred grain, to the right for favour, to the left for ruin. With a sharp click, he opens the hatch. The chickens refuse the light. They huddle in the back of the cage, bumping against one another. The augur stamps his foot. He makes shooing motions, his breath hitching. Finally, he grips the cage and gives it a violent shake. One bird finally stumbles out. It ignores the grain entirely. It lifts its left wing, shudders, and scurries back into the darkness of the cage.
The auspices are inconclusive, my lord.
The left wing.
The science of augury is not as exact as we might wish, Mother. A veil lies across the future, but the sun is rising regardless. The future arrives whether the birds approve or not.
Mother and son share a final, silent look. The air in the vestibule is cool, but the heavy scent of old wax and ancestral dust is stifling. Tiberius pauses before the wax mask of his grandfather, Scipio Africanus. He reaches out, his fingers tracing the cold, stern brow of the man who broke Carthage. With a sharp nod to the slave at the door, the heavy oak bolts are thrown back. The street is a sea of bodies. Some have slept in the dirt for 3 days to guard his door. Others are scarred from the midnight scuffles that have turned Rome into a tinderbox. Rumors of a senatorial hit squad hang in the air, like smoke. Tiberius steps forward, a broad, practiced smile fixed on his face. He hits the stone threshold wrong. His left foot catches, his full weight slamming his toe into the jagged paving. He staggers, his vision swimming as blood begins to soak through the fine leather of his sandal. He reaches out blindly, his fingers digging into Blossius's arm.
Tiberius, you've hurt yourself. Did they see?
The crowd, they're too loud. No one noticed. Keep me upright, Blossius.
Can you walk?
If I lean on you, just get me to the front. These men have waited all night. They need to hear the lion roar, not see the cripple limp. Loyal supporters, friends, Romans, the long night has passed, and despite every shadow and every threat, we are all still alive. You watched over me while the city slept. For that, you have my life. In return, I give you my promise. This second year of my tribunate will be for you. We will restore the lands that were stolen. We will break the grip of the land grabbers and their gangs. We will make the Rome of your children a place of dignity, not a city of beggars. But to do this, I must survive. The threat is real. My enemies do not want a vote. They want a sacrifice. I carry no steel. I am a private citizen. I have only you. You must be my armor. Without your protection, I am defenseless.
We'll defend you. We'll die for you, Tiberius.
I pray to Jupiter it never comes to blood. But if the din grows too loud and I cannot cry out, watch for this signal.
He raises both arms high, then bends his elbows, pointing both hands directly at his own head. The gesture is clear. Rally to the head.
Perhaps it's a good thing I stumbled. The bad omen is behind me now. Blossius, let's get to the Capitoline.
Tiberius begins the long climb. As he descends the Palatine, the retinue of the dispossessed swells around him, thousands of voices chanting a single name. In the forum, the crowd parts like a tide. Tiberius stops at the statue of Scipio Africanus, gazing up at the stone face of the grandfather who conquered Hannibal.
My grandfather faced the elephants of Carthage and the spears of Spain. And here I am, letting a stubbed toe give me pause. No more. No more limping, Blossius. From here, I walk like a Roman.
Above them, on a terracotta roof, 2 ravens tear at each other. In their fury, they dislodge a heavy tile. It plummets, shattering against the cobbles inches from Tiberius's blood-soaked shoe.
The chickens, the stumble, and now this. The gods are shouting at me, Blossius.
Ravens squabble, Tiberius. That is their nature. If you start seeing the hand of fate in every loose bit of clay, you aren't a leader. You're a tyrant who thinks the universe revolves around his head. Straighten your toga. Walk.
The space before the Temple of Jupiter is a battlefield before the first blow. Polling officials brandish spear shafts just to hold back the press of the tribes. Fistfights break out in the tight corners of the shrines. Fulvius Flaccus breaks through the line, his face pale with sweat.
Tiberius,
The Senate is in a frenzy. Scaevola refused to stop the vote, but Nausicaa, your cousin, has gone mad. He's gathered a mob of senators and cutthroats. They've wrapped their togas over their heads like priests at a sacrifice. They aren't coming to arrest you, Tiberius. They're coming to kill you.
The signal. Give the signal now.
Tiberius points to his head. A plea for protection. But in the roar of the forum, the truth is lost.
Look, he points to his head. He's demanding a crown. The tyrant wants a diadem.
His supporters break the polling shafts into cudgels, preparing for a defense. But it is too late. Nausicaa and his party arrive.
Inside the temple, run, Tiberius. Claim the protection of Jupiter.
The mob descends. They don't use swords. That would be a soldier's death. They use the legs of broken benches and the shards of polling booths. They tear the toga from Tiberius's back, stripping him of his office and his dignity.
Jupiter, protector of my fathers, witness this.
The first blow sends him reeling. The second, swung with the full weight of senatorial fury, shatters his skull. The most beloved man in Rome collapses onto the cold marble of the temple steps. There is no grand speech, no final defiant words for the history books. There is only the silence of the Capitoline and the blood of a Gracchus pooling in the cracks of the marble. For 400 years, 4 centuries of war, famine, and invasion, the Roman Republic had endured. It was a system built on a sacred, unspoken pact that no matter how bitter the politics, a Roman does not spill the blood of a fellow citizen. That pact died in the year 133. Tiberius Gracchus believed he was saving the Republic. He saw a Rome choked by greed, its veteran farmers replaced by slave gangs, its strength withered. He reached for the law to restore the people's dignity. But to the Roman elite, he wasn't a savior. He was a contagion. To the men who wrapped their togas like priests to butcher him, Tiberius was a would-be king who had dared to touch their wealth and their pride. This was the first great political assassination in the history of the Republic. It would not be the last. As the senators gathered the broken body of the tribune and prepared to cast it into the Tiber like common refuse, they didn't realize they had just taught the next generation a terrifying lesson. The men who raised the clubs did not know it, but Rome had crossed a line from which there would be no return.
10 years have passed since the death of Tiberius, a decade in which the Senate hoped the memory of the Gracchi would fade into obscurity. It is now 122 BC, and the younger brother, Gaius, has finally come of age to claim his seat as tribune. More calculated and far more radical than his brother, Gaius is determined to finish what Tiberius started. But, as his legislative revolution pushes Rome to the brink, the Senate prepares a response that will stain the Republic forever. This is the rise and fall of Gaius Gracchus.
When I was a boy, my tutor Blossius made me read every line of Euripides. Only a few lines from the Bacchae stayed with me. The gods have many guises. They bring crises to a climax, while man only surmises. The end expected is never the end reached. But the gods find a way for what no man saw coming. Well, my friends, the play is just beginning. 9 years ago, when my brother Tiberius was murdered, who among us could have foreseen this day?
Gaius paused. 1, 2, 3. He counted to 10 in his head, a technique Tiberius had taught him.
Stop now and then, little brother. Let them breathe.
He wasn't in the forum today, but in the lamplit garden of his mother's house. This was a victory celebration for the newly elected tribune of the plebs.
Perhaps my mother foresaw it.
He nodded to Cornelia, reclining nearby.
She exhorted me to live up to my grandfather, Africanus, but it is her own fortitude that inspires me. Join me in saluting her, Cornelia, mother of the people's martyr.
Cornelia beamed, playing the part of the proud mother she had performed throughout the campaign. The crowds had been unlike anything seen before. Men had slept in trees and on rooftops just to vote for a man promised to finish his brother's work.
And let us not forget my dear friend Quintus Sempronius. He represents a new force in Rome, the equestrians, men of means who have built this city with their own hands. Quintus is a builder, a father, and my trusted confidant. Salute him.
Quintus blushed. The world knew Gaius's story, the trauma, the exile, the return. But no one knew the shame that gnawed at Quintus. He had been close to Tiberius, but in the end he had been too afraid to stand by him. He had found wealth in the years since, but no peace. Supporting Gaius was his only shot at redemption.
I see the virtuous Sempronia Hilaria, who raised Quintus and my lovely wife Licinia. I thank you both for keeping my mother company while I was out buying wine for the voters.
But Gaius, did you have to buy a round every night in every tavern in Rome?
That got a couple of laughs from the assembled crowd.
My friends, you've heard my pledges as a candidate. Now hear them from your tribune. The state shall clothe its soldiers, not the men themselves. No boy under 17 shall be forced to serve. We will build new colonies for our veterans. We will stabilize the price of grain. If the state cannot make food affordable, what is the state for? We will break the Senate's monopoly on the courts. 300 equestrians shall sit as judges alongside them. Let the Senate keep their dignity. We will take their power.
What about land reform?
My brother died for land reform. His murderers only enacted it themselves to stop a revolution. They are vipers who steal the fruit and claim they planted the tree.
Gaius's voice turned shrill. Behind him, a servant named Licinius blew a low, calming note on a pipe. Gaius relaxed instantly.
Licinius is my wife's freedman. He keeps my temper in check, an orator's trick. Now, the capstone, full citizenship for all our Italian allies. Give them the vote, and Rome will find its golden age. I pray that in this election, Rome has finally found its Pericles.
Quintus drew a sharp breath. This was more than Tiberius ever dreamed of. It was exhilarating and terrifying.
People ask if I fear my brother's fate. I tell them I had a dream. Tiberius called to me. He said,
"Brother, why do you tarry? One life and one death is appointed for us both. Spend the one and meet the other in the service of the people."
The guests were in tears. Later, in a quiet corner, the family gathered.
You are a finer orator than your brother was, Gaius.
But that dream, my son, to speak so lightly of your own death gives me a shiver.
It's a great story, Mother, and it's true. Besides, I am a patriot. How else can I die, except in the service of Rome?
Such cynicism. Don't speak in that manner.
She was relieved by his glibness. Quintus, too, hoped that Gaius's cynicism was the shield that would keep him alive.
Where is everyone?
Quintus was pacing around the atrium of Gaius's new house. It was a ramshackle place in the Subura, the slums. Gaius had moved here to be among the poor. Quintus didn't care for the place, but was happy to be out of the rain.
They'll be back.
He had just returned from Africa, where he had attempted to found the colony of Junonia on the ruins of Carthage.
How was the foundation ceremony?
Bad. The wind blew away the sacrifices. The priest said they heard Hannibal laughing. What have you heard?
Rumours that wolves dug up the boundary stones.
A lie from the Senate. But enough of that. What happened in Rome while I was away?
I saw the Senator Piso Frugi standing in the grain line with a voucher, the man who fought your subsidy the hardest. I asked him how he dared take the grain. He said if you were going to pilfer the treasury, he'd take his share back as a matter of principle.
Unbelievable. The men who argue against public benefits are always the first in line to receive them. But what of Livius Drusus?
He has been relentless. He is out-Gracchusing you. He tells the mob they'll lose their seats at the theatre if the Italians get the vote. He proposes colonies even more radical than yours, but with no rent. The Senate supports him because he is their puppet, a way to steal your supporters.
In my first year, nothing could go wrong. In my second, nothing goes right. I can only hope for a third term.
A third term? Gaius, the Senate will never allow it.
The people will demand it.
Quintus doubted it, but he remained silent. Gaius paced the garden of his house in the Subura, circling the peristyle like a caged animal. Since failing to win a third term as tribune in 122, his position had grown increasingly precarious.
They'll goad me to violence if they can. That's the trap. Corner me, dishonor me, drive me to desperation until I strike back. Then they can butcher me and claim they did it for the sake of Rome. The election was a farce, rife with illegalities.
This is old ground, Gaius. We've covered it many times before. The past can't be undone.
Quintus leaned against a column, still and watchful. He was a man of business, a builder who understood that once a foundation cracks, the structure follows. He watched Gaius with a growing sense of dread.
I admit it was a mistake. When I ordered my supporters to demolish the wooden seats for that gladiator match, but a paid seating area for the rich obscures the view of the poor. If the state provides the games, the people must see them.
But you resorted to violence, Gaius. You played into their hands. Now they call you a dangerous rabble-rouser, a violent demagogue.
Now that Gaius was out of office, the Senate was systematically erasing his life's work. Today, they were to debate revoking the charter for Junonia, the colony that was to be built on the ruins of Carthage. That was to be Gaius's most enduring monument.
Is it true what they say about Cornelia's charity? That she brought reapers from the countryside into Rome to look for work?
Everyone knows that. The reapers provide cheap labour.
Some say the programme is a pretext, a way to swell the number of your loyalists in the city, just in case of the violence both sides are preparing for.
Quintus looked over his shoulder. Some of the reapers were in Gaius's house at that very moment, milling about, restless, armed with staves and sharpened scythes.
You never share your plans with me anymore, Gaius. Ever since you returned from Africa, you've shut me out.
If I've shut you out, Quintus, I've done it for your own good. You're a businessman, not a politician. You pose no real threat to my enemies. Why should you suffer my fate?
I'm your friend, Gaius.
You were Tiberius's friend too, yet you never raised a finger to help him. Or Blossius, for that matter.
Quintus drew a sharp breath. Desperation brought out a petty side of Gaius.
When Fortuna favoured you, I enjoyed your friendship. Fortuna may have turned her back on you, but I never will.
Then come with me now, to the Forum. There's to be a protest against the motion to abandon Junonia.
The day was hot and oppressively humid, with thunder in the air. As Gaius and his entourage approached the Senate House, they encountered a tall, angular man carrying a shallow bowl. This was Quintus Antilius, a secretary to the consul Opimius, carrying the goat entrails from the morning's sacrifice. As he passed, Antilius smirked at Gaius and his followers.
Get out of my way, street trash. Make way for a decent citizen.
The insult pricked at the outrage Quintus normally held in check.
Who do you dare call trash?
This piece of dung.
Antilius gestured at Gaius with the bowl. Entrails sloshed out and spattered Gaius's toga. Antilius shrieked with laughter. Without thinking, acting purely on impulse, Quintus sprang forward. He plunged his metal stylus into Antilius's chest. Men gasped. Antilius clutched the stylus, trying to pull it from his ribs, but the polished metal was too slippery with blood. He convulsed and fell backward, cracking his head on a paving stone. Lucius Opimius, the leader of the Optimates faction and current consul for the year 121, rushed out of the Senate and yelled,
"Murderer! You've killed a servant of the Senate while he was carrying out a sacred duty."
The man threw bloody entrails on a tribune of the plebs.
"You're not a tribune any longer. You're just a madman and a murderer."
A flash of lightning illuminated the scene. A deafening crack of thunder followed, and the sky opened. Hard rain pelted the crowd, scattering the rioters. But the fate of the Gracchi was sealed. The next day, Quintus did something he never did before. He wore his family fascinum, a gold talisman to ward off evil. The atmosphere in Rome was one of hysterical dread. In the Forum, a crowd mourned Antilius. In the Subura, Gaius's house was a fortress of desperation.
Lucius Opimius has passed the ultimate decree of the Senate. This is truly unprecedented territory for Rome. It allows the consuls to take all necessary measures to protect the state. In other words, they are empowered to kill any citizen on the spot, without a trial. They're opening Pandora's box, Quintus.
Gaius's glib tone suddenly gave way. His voice cracked.
What's to become of our beloved republic? All of you, gather your weapons. I'm not going to wait for them to attack me in my home. I shall go to the Forum and say a prayer before the statue of my father.
Upon hearing this, Gaius's wife, Licinia, came running and clutched his toga.
No, husband. You're safe in this house. Your followers can protect you here.
My fate is in the hands of the gods now, my love.
If you must go, do so unarmed. If the followers of Opimius see you with armed men, there will surely be violence, and they will blame you for it.
I'd rather die in battle than like a sheep offered for sacrifice.
Gaius flashed a crooked smile.
Gaius, this is no joke. The same men who killed Tiberius are determined to murder you as well.
As long as I draw breath, I am still a free citizen of Rome. I will not be a prisoner in my own home.
As Gaius moved toward the door, Licinia dissolved into sobs, but the party exited anyway. As they entered the Forum, the vast throngs who had once promised to defend Gaius seemed to have melted away. Before the statue of his father, Gaius paused for a long time. Quintus was to his right, and his slave Philocrates to his left. Gaius gazed up at the face of the elder Tiberius.
My grandfather cast a long shadow, Quintus. Men know me as the grandson of Scipio Africanus, not the son of Tiberius Gracchus, but my father was also a great Roman. His victories in Spain established a peace that lasted 25 years. His embassies to Asia made him the confidant of kings. He was twice elected consul, twice awarded triumphs, and served as censor. My brother would have been as great if he had lived. I had hoped that I might...
You're going to surpass all of them, my friend.
The greatness of Rome was built on shared sacrifice. You know, 30% of the Senate was wiped out at the Battle of Cannae. My own grandfather, the great Africanus, was only 19 when he fought there, though he managed to survive. Do you...
Gaius cut off the sentence when he heard a raging mob headed his way from the direction of the Senate House. Armed men appeared in the distance, vastly outnumbering his own entourage.
We must return to your home, Gaius. We don't have the men.
I can already hear the fighting in that direction, Quintus. There's no going back. I will make my stand here. This is where I fall.
Men from the party began to scatter in every direction upon hearing this. Gaius's remaining followers looked to him for orders. After a while, he said,
Quintus, Philocrates, all of you, follow me.
They soon came upon the temple of Diana. Gaius ran into the temple. The handful of supporters who followed watched him fall to his knees before the statue of the goddess.
Queen of the hunt, daughter of Jupiter, sister of Apollo, accept this sacrifice.
He placed the pommel of his sword on the floor and pointed the blade toward his chest. Before he could fall on it, Quintus snatched the sword from him and handed it to Philocrates. Gaius wept. He beat his fists against the floor.
Ungrateful, treacherous Romans! I put a curse on you. I pointed the way to freedom, and you turned against me. I risked everything for you, and now you abandon me. Be slaves forever, then, to the murderers in the Senate.
Quintus was struck dumb by this act by his friend. Gaius had always been a courageous man, a fighter. Now he seemed to determine to take his own life, without even a struggle. Quintus decided he couldn't judge Gaius, as he knew in his heart that his friend was always trying to do the right thing.
Gaius, they're coming. We have to go.
The party ran into the street, and the pursuit resumed. They ran through the winding streets of the Aventine, along salt warehouses along the Tiber, and through the bustling markets of the Forum Boreum. Seeing them run by, some shouted encouragement, others pelted them with radishes and turnips. But after all the Gracchi had sacrificed for the people, nobody was willing to lend a helping hand. As the party reached the bridge across the Tiber, some of the men stopped and turned around, determined to make their stand there. They begged Gaius to keep running and get away. Gaius, his slave Philocrates, and Quintus made it to the west bank of the Tiber. The three men got off the road and headed into the foliage, hoping to disappear. A narrow pathway led them to a stand of tall trees. The soft earth seemed to swallow the sound of their footsteps. Amid the leafy shadows, a beam of sunlight fell upon a stone altar in a small clearing.
What place is this?
The grove of the Furies, Tisiphone, Megaera, and Alecto, the vengeful sisters who punish sinful mortals with madness. Only black sheep can be sacrificed to them. Do you see their images on the altar? They carry whips and torches. Their hair is made of snakes. They're older than Jupiter. They were born of the blood that was spilled when Cronus the Titan castrated his father Uranus, born of a crime of a son against his father. Yet I've always honored my father and my grandfather. Why have the Furies led me here?
Gaius dropped to his knees before the altar. He could hear the approaching pursuers. They would be here any second.
Philocrates, do you have my sword?
Master, I beg you.
Put an end to me, Philocrates. At the temple of Diana, I lost my nerve. I let them stop me. Do it for me, Philocrates. Do it now.
Master, I can't bear to do it.
I command you to do it.
Weeping, the young slave turned the blade on himself, and he fell forward, his cries of anguish echoing throughout the forest. The pursuers were closing in now. Gaius knelt over the boy, then pulled the sword from his chest. He looked up at Quintus.
This is what the Furies want. You brought about this crisis when you slew Antilius. Now you must end it. Would you allow me to be torn to pieces by my enemies?
Quintus hesitantly took the sword. He couldn't look Gaius in the eye. He was still racked with guilt over the death of Tiberius, and now he was being forced to take the life of Gaius.
I was a coward when Tiberius fell. I watched from the shadows while they broke his body on the stones. I won't let them do the same to you, Gaius. I will carry this burden for you and for Tiberius. Give him my regards.
He circled Gaius, knelt behind him, and clutched him tightly with one arm. He raised the blade. With his last breath, Gaius hissed a curse.
Let them be slaves of the Senate forever.
Quintus drew the blade over the neck of Gaius. Blood flowed warm and wet over his arm. He dropped the sword and hid in the shadows just as the pursuers entered the clearing.
Dead already. The coward cheated us. No matter. The bounty for the head of Gaius Gracchus is just as good if he's cold. I claim it.
The man raised his sword and hacked at Gaius's neck until the head came free. He lifted it by the hair, whooping with triumph, spattering the altar with gore. In the days that followed, Rome was a killing field. Under the ultimate decree, 3,000 Roman citizens were hunted through the streets and put to death without trial. Their bodies were denied burial and cast into the Tiber, the same river that had claimed Tiberius 12 years before. Remarkably, the name of Quintus Sempronius never appeared on the official lists of the condemned. Whether his insignificance as a man of business shielded him, or Opimius simply grew tired of the slaughter, no one can say. Quintus returned to his work, building the stone roads that would outlast the Republic. He never spoke of politics again. But every night, before he slept, he touched the gold fascinum at his neck and whispered a prayer for the 2 brothers who he had sworn to protect. For Cornelia, the mother of the Gracchi, the world became a place of quiet, dignified exile. She moved to a villa at Misenum, where she lived surrounded by Greek scholars and the memories of her sons. When visitors spoke of her losses with pity, she would only straighten her back and say, "I shall never be called unhappy, for I am the woman who gave birth to the brothers Gracchi." She understood what the Senate did not, that her sons had ceased to be men and had become ideas. People remembered their story and raised statues in their honor in the years to come. Their movement was crushed, but the names of Tiberius and Gaius became the twin ghosts of the Roman imagination. To the Senate, they were the architects of chaos. To the people, they were the martyred champions of a stolen freedom. They had shown Rome that the law was a thin veil, and that beneath it lay only the raw power of the mob and the blade. The Republic would endure for another century, but it would do so in a fever. The Gracchi had broken the seal on political murder. From this moment on, every orator's speech and every soldier's march would be an echo of the blood spilled in the grove of the Furies. The brothers were gone, but the metaphorical Rubicon had already been crossed.
The blood of the Gracchi has dried, but the fire they lit continues to smoulder in the heart of the Roman Forum. The conquering Republic has survived its first internal crisis, yet the cracks in its foundation have only grown wider. As we look toward Act II, the new men, the focus shifts from the marble halls of the Senate to the jagged frontiers of a changing world. In our next act, we will travel to the searing sands of North Africa to witness the war with Jugurtha, a conflict that reveals a Rome so corrupt it can be bought by any king with enough gold. We will witness the rise of 2 titans who will define the next generation, the rugged populist soldier Gaius Marius and the brilliant, ruthless aristocrat Lucius Cornelius Sulla. But even as Rome fights itself, a shadow looms from the north. A Germanic terror is rising, the Cimbri and the Teutones, migrating tribes that will inflict upon Rome its greatest military disaster at Arausio, leaving the gates of Italy wide open. In this era of existential threat, the old laws will be pushed to their breaking point. We will see the rise of the new men, leaders who will bypass centuries of tradition to answer the demands of a desperate people and a professionalizing army. As the borders of the Republic are redrawn in blood, the political balance in Rome will shift toward a new, aggressive faction, setting the stage for a struggle that will determine who truly owns the future of Rome. All of this in Act II of Rubicon, the new men.